Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about time management. Now, this isn't a subject of a standalone podcast, but in the workshops that I've been doing with you all over the last couple of years, we have integrated this into our conversations in quite a few different topics. I thought it was just an interesting thing to talk about because from my experience, what I've heard from a lot of people is that a particular source of stress is when people feel that they just don't have enough time. They're time poor, they fill their days with all sorts of activities and they're always feeling like they're chasing their tail. So time management, I thought, would be a useful topic for us to talk very, very briefly about. Essentially, what I wanted to talk to you about today was a time management framework called the Matrix of Prioritization. Some of you may have heard of it. It's not my framework. It was coined by a man called Stephen Covey, and it's just a very useful way, I think, to think about your time if you are the sort of person that feels like they never have enough time to get the things done that they want to get done. So essentially, this framework has 4 quadrants. The first quadrant are the things that you do that are both important and urgent. These are often the things that have a particular time frame on them. Usually these are work-related tasks. Also might be things that you can't get away from the time or the deadline that has been set. Maybe these are things to do with kids at school or outside activities that you do. These are the things that have to be done in a certain time. These often tend to also be the sorts of activities that you have to drop everything for. So you get a call from your kid's school because they've bumped their head or something, you've got to drop everything and off you go. Those are the sorts of activities that you can't avoid. You can't necessarily even see them coming. So that's quadrant 1. Quadrant 2 is around tasks that are not necessarily urgent, but just as important. Now, these could be things like forecasting or planning that you do when sourcing produce, when sourcing stock. You're thinking ahead, you're projecting what you're going to need at what times and how much you will need to kind of buy in advance. Doesn't necessarily have a deadline around it, but those are really important activities. Another example might be, having conversations with your team, checking in to see how they're going from a mental health perspective, having those kind of team building kind of conversations, those teamly activities that you do. Even things like people debriefing after a shift about a difficult customer, not necessarily urgent, but super important in terms of people feeling supported and like they've got the opportunity to kind of download some challenges that they've had. So that's quadrant 2. Quadrant 3 is around the things that are urgent but not important. Often these can be things like getting caught up in meetings that have no purpose, meetings for the sake of meetings that don't have an outcome. Or it might be those emails that, get sent around to everyone in an organisation, but for 90% of people, it's an FYI and something they don't really need to know about. That sort of stuff. It's not necessarily time reference, not necessarily crucially important, but often urgent in the sense that, you have to attend at a certain time or you have to read an email by a certain time. So that's quadrant 3. Quadrant 4 is your non-urgent, non-important stuff. And these are your time waster kind of activities. Finding that you're getting pulled into something that you didn't need to be doing, that it was really no benefit for at all. And yet you found, 45 minutes of your day is just gone in the blink of an eye. Sometimes these can also be conversations with people that are, again, a little bit of a waste of time. Not every conversation will be that way, but it might be the sort of conversation that, again, doesn't really go anywhere. You don't really get an outcome. People just kind of go round and round in circles. So have a think about, from a time management perspective, have a think about these 4 quadrants and see if you can work out how much time you spend in each of those every day. The idea being that quadrant 2, now this was the important but not urgent. Quadrant 2, that's your sweet spot. That's where you want to be spending most of your time. And the theory goes that the more time you spend in quadrant 2, the less time you will spend in quadrant 1, which is your important and urgent. Now, you're always going to have the things that you can't avoid, right? Like the child falling down off the monkey bars at school. That's unavoidable sort of stuff. But things like unexpected things going wrong, supply or stock levels running out and it's not expected, so you have to duck off to the local IGA to buy a whole lot of bits and pieces because you've run out and you've got service that night. That sort of stuff, if you had foreseen them, planned for them, anticipated them, which is your quadrant 2 stuff, you're going to be doing less of putting out fires, which often is what takes up a lot of our time. Food for thought.